Volcanic mountains dip sandy toes in an azure sea. On our island slope, aloha meets our life force chi.
Blessed to be in fellowship here, alive in this glorious land. Our joy should eclipse all care, yet in pain we understand.
Our country is enacting, backtracking, hacking, and fracking. Leaders represent us when they are the last ones we'd be backing.
Across our island, state, country, globe, hopes of equity are fading. Against humanity comes greed, hate, hoarding, and raiding.
Surprised and shocked by our leaders' bellicose tracks, they are then matched by nations' intolerant acts.
Leaders tapping into fear and anger and greed blast a non-stop, ignorant, embarrassing screed.
Yet we cannot get caught up in negative reaction. Instead, we must drive for empathy and satisfaction.
So, how can we find equity, justice, and peace while loving our brother when he disagrees?
What actions can we take? What resolutions should we make?
Now we come to focus our response, to strategize actions to engender renaissance.
Your Social Justice Council brings you our draft for new and revised resolutions together to craft.
With these drafts, we propose we resolve, around which our efforts this year to revolve.
Hear ye, time to think clearly.
Define our intentions, then meet them quite nearly.
This is our opening to today's social justice service. This is a time when we look at the resolutions that this church has passed over the years, think about what are the urgencies of the time we're in now, and we create new resolutions, revise old resolutions, and move some resolutions into our historic area. All of these resolutions in full text are available on our website, and we also have a full text copy at the back of the church in hard copy, and this list is with your order of service. Does everyone have one of these lists? That gives you the titles of the resolutions that you'll be voting on November 5th. If you'd like to go to the website or get one of the copies of the full text, and if you have changes to suggest to us, we'd like you to tell us. Now, in this service, we're going to be presenting 6 of the focus areas, and we've color-coded them to make it easy. And you all have a survey.
This one.
If you don't have a survey, can you raise your hand? And Junko, could you bring them a survey? It's very important because what we're trying to do here is to see what activities are each of us already doing in each of these focus areas of social justice, and what actions would we plan or like to take in the future. So we'd like you to write your name on the survey form, and at the end of each of the 6 very short presentations we're going to make, you'll have a minute to just jot a few words about what you've done or what you plan to do. Mahalo.
Okay. My name is Lori Ford, and I'm going to be talking to you about racism, the resolution to end white supremacy and forge a path to collective liberation. White supremacy is constant, ever-evolving, and unfortunately a staple of American culture and society. Acknowledging that we exist within a racist society and that racism exists and works in insidious ways does not make one a white supremacist. It is, in fact, the first step on the path towards creating an anti-racist society. I'm going to read a quote from a white UU minister named Reverend Krista Taves, who wrote a response to the hiring decision in the UU Church and white supremacy in general. I get why there is so much pushback about using the term white supremacy to describe the culture in Unitarian Universalist institutions. We have been trained to see white supremacy as an overt expression of racism, replete with burning crosses, white hoods, Confederate flags, lynchings, and angry white people in black and white footage shouting racist epithets at black children trying to enter white schools. This allows liberal whites to distance themselves from racism and believe that we aren't part of it. At least we aren't calling people names, threatening their lives, or muttering under our breath. I admit my stomach turned when I first heard the term white supremacy used to describe the culture of Unitarian Universalism and our institutions. But I have reconsidered that response. White supremacy is way bigger than the way we've been trained to understand it. White supremacy is a way of thinking that devalues the experiences, insights, and lived reality of people of color. The consequences of this thinking goes beyond an abstract state of mind and has the real-life impact of denying people of color a real voice with real power. Rarely is this culture explicit or even conscious in liberal white communities. It is implicit and unconscious. This is why I totally believe that those responsible for the hires in the UU Church are fully convinced they did nothing wrong and were not acting out of racial bias. However, they were unconsciously acting out of racial bias. Naming this as an act of white supremacy is pretty scary, but it is the right thing to do. It has purely shocked a lot of whites into paying attention. Calling what happened implicit bias gives it a pass. It makes it softer than what it actually is. The devaluing of people of color and the denial of authority and power to people of color. We are being very brave to call it what it is. In fact, it sets us apart from the most liberal institutions, which are in complete denial about the power of racism to shape their decisions and their processes. There is not one institution in this country that is not shaped by white supremacy, and that includes institutions run by people of color. We have all been indoctrinated into white supremacy thinking. Therefore, there is no reason to feel shame or fear. It is not your fault. You are not stained. We are not irredeemable. Our Universalist heritage says that no one is left behind. Let's anchor in that promise. I implore you to resist your urge to run away or to distance yourself from the term. Stay with us, bend into the task at hand, and dare to be vulnerable. In May of 2017, Joshua Pawlik of the Universalist Society East wrote, "Remember that the Unitarian and Universalist denominations were founded by white people to serve the spiritual needs of white people in the decades following the founding of the United States, which was by law a country for white people. People of color were present among our spiritual forebears, but they were highly marginalized, in part because they had a less than human legal status in the larger society. White identity, values, culture, spirituality, music, food, and concerns were at the center of early Unitarian and Universalist institutional life. That's the white supremacy we're talking about, that unexamined assumption that the center is always white. Today, much has changed about our faith, and much has changed about America. But if our institutions have never made a serious commitment to decentering whiteness, then it is always possible for white supremacy to operate. Even in the midst of our support for Black Lives Matter, refugee resettlement, former inmates, domestic workers, and undocumented people, all of it is essential work expressing our commitment to confronting racism. We can still perpetuate white supremacy. If we never affirm that we want racial and cultural diversity in our staff, in our leadership team, in our membership, in the artists whose work adorn our walls, in our Sunday speakers, or in our partners in the wider community, then we'll never give ourselves the opportunity to think through how these goals might be achievable. Whiteness will continue to be our unexamined institutional center, and the risk of white supremacy operating here will remain. Excuse me. James Baldwin said, "People who shut their eyes to reality simply invite their own destruction, and anyone who insists on remaining in a state of innocence long after that innocence is dead turns himself into a monster." Be it resolved that the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu condemns all forms of racism by making every effort to end white supremacy and forge a path to collective liberation. Thank you.
Hi, right now I'm Lee Coran, even though I'm Nancy. And as Lee, I worked on the energy policy section of the social justice resolutions. The previous resolution of support for the energy policy put the onus of the work on our government to take action. Personally, Lee doesn't have a lot of faith in the government to do it, and right now I don't either. Okay, so we've changed the resolution to be more personal and to speak to each of us. The onus is on us collectively, as community, as individuals, to implement the energy policy that we, not a government entity, can initiate expeditiously and meaningfully. We try to promote grassroots efforts to live a sustainable lifestyle. In our daily lives, we can reuse, recycle, and repurpose so much of our consumer goods. We can be mindful of our eating habits. Eating more responsibly can include the cultivation and the consumption of locally grown food and choosing a plant-based diet that minimizes animal consumption, not necessarily cuts it out. Before making purchases, we can be mindful of other opportunities to acquire needed consumer goods. Libraries these days are not just for reading materials. Libraries offer tools. I'm thinking about John Hofstetter, who works at the Tool Library. They offer sports equipment, crafting supplies, and so much more. Using community resources will help us reduce the use of our energy. In conclusion, when Lee saw these resolutions for the first time a few months ago, she wasn't terribly excited because they looked like word soup. But as she worked with the other members on the social justice team, she experienced firsthand our excitement and our passion to create resolutions that don't sound like word soup, but are relevant and inspiring. They offer magnificent opportunities for us as both a congregation and individuals to be impactful in creating a better world and ensuring a world that is habitable for future generations. Thank you.
Aloha, I am Ka'imi Nicholson, standing in for Allison Jacobs, who is the elected member of the Social Justice Council. And we are at a pivotal moment in human history. I am so excited for our church to adopt the resolution that we've entitled Humanize, Not Criminalize. Governor Ige has proposed to build a new jail on Oahu at a cost of $650 million, the biggest public works project in the history of the state. And as we know from the rail project, that's just the opening quote. It would likely increase significantly. The initiative behind this proposal did not come from we the people. It did not come from law enforcement agencies, and it did not come from the community activists who are sincerely concerned for the people who are living in overcrowded conditions in our jail, which is known as OCCC, Oahu Community Correctional Center. The initiative behind this came from the corporations who make their money building and running prisons. Let me tell you what a jail is. A jail is where people are sent who are sentenced to less than 1 year of imprisonment. And it's also where people are who do not have a sentence, have not been convicted of any crime, but haven't had the money to post bail until it came to the time of their day in court. I have a dear friend who did not post bail, and she was in OCCC for 6 months before she had her day in court. At that time, the judge pronounced her innocent by reason of mental disability or illness, and that was at a cost of $140 a day to the taxpayers of Hawaii. It doesn't take much imagination to realize that, oh, and let me tell you what her crime was. She was off her medication, she was delusional, and she went into a house that she had been in before but was not her house, and she ate a banana. That was her crime. So it doesn't take much imagination to realize that that situation could have been handled much better, and that $25,000, more than $25,000 that was spent to incarcerate her could have been better spent. And that's why we need citizen oversight for our Department of Public Safety, which runs these institutions. 50%, that was just one person, but more than 50% of the people in our Oahu jail are there because they can't afford bail. We're punishing people for being poor. And the great news is, the research shows that you don't need money bail for people to show up for their day in court. And that research was done on the mainland. We live on a small island. It's not necessary. So if we had 50% of the people now in OCCC not there, we could totally remodel and improve that facility while it's still in use. The research is in. The data shows programs, therapeutic programs, mental health services, drug rehab, educational programs are what increases public safety, decreases crime, and decreases recidivism, which is when people go into prison and then come back later. It's programs. We do not have enough services. I've been a therapist on this island for 30 years, and every time I went to check out a drug addiction rehab program for my clients, there were no openings. They're constantly waitlisted. We don't have enough programs in our criminal justice system or outside. And the medical director employed by the Department of Public Safety recently spoke out about this, that we are not meeting our minimum standards, federal standards for mental health services for inmates. And coincidentally, shortly after that, his contract was not renewed. We can do better than this. This, as I said, is a pivotal time in human history. Consciousness has been raised. Videotapes of police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement has raised the consciousness of everyone. And it's time for us to take leadership, to channel that awareness into public policy change. Hawaii has a very low voter turnout, but we here in this church are the voters. We are the ones who are paying attention. And we are the ones who know that we can make a difference because we've done it before. We won on the issue of marriage equality. We showed leadership by reaching out to other religious communities in the progressive interfaith Ohana. Everybody came out for rallies at the Capitol. We testified in hearings. We wrote, we talked to our legislators. And that's what it takes. It's really not that hard. And the great news is that, well, Allison and I have been involved in a group called the Community Justice Coalition since it was started. And I'm seeing many more groups join this coalition and much more energy happening. All the people who got activated, who were inspired by the Bernie Sanders campaign and who are activated by horror of our presidency are joining in and taking initiative. They're going to talk to legislators every Thursday, and you could join in if you like. And they're creating new ways of getting our message out to the public. So we have the power, and we are the leadership for our community. Together, we can truly make this the Aloha State. Thank you.
Immigration policy is a major problem for our country. We on the Social Justice Committee are really proud of our state's quick response to Trump's declarations against people from many Muslim states traveling here. Harris United Methodist Church has gone through the process to become a sanctuary church. They are a much, much bigger church than we are. Our church has chosen to offer support, or our resolution offers support, to churches who provide sanctuary to undocumented immigrants. Because of our small size, we will help by giving various kinds of supports, including food and our presence at these churches when we are needed. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Graham, and I'm talking to you about housing and homelessness. Gone are the days of Hawaii's ali'i, having lovely homes on the beach of Waikiki and summer houses here in Nuuanu. Now are the days of luxury high-rises in Kaka'ako and expensive hotels in Waikiki, while we have homeless encampments in the parks and under the freeways. These same homeless people are very clever and have figured out how to tap into the electrical grid to air condition their tents or to have TV running in the evening. This costs a lot of money. The powers that be have just conducted a sweep in Kaka'ako, also very expensive. These sweeps offer alternative housing options to people at the same time as they throw all their belongings in a garbage truck. There has to be a better way. Our Social Justice Council resolution supports housing for our homeless citizens. That seems like a no-brainer. We all say we support housing, but the not in my backyard folks are everywhere. Maybe you feel a tinge of that yourself. I invite you all to come to a public meeting this Wednesday evening or Thursday morning to hear plans to develop the Hawaii Public Housing Authority's current office site at the corner of School Street and Lanakila. That is in our neighborhood, right here. They would like to put up high-rise to house senior citizens. The neighborhood is up in arms. They are against housing for senior citizens. No, that's not true. They're not against housing for senior citizens. They're against housing for senior citizens in their backyard. They say there are already plenty high-rises in that area. There is already plenty crime and low-income people. They don't want any more low-income people in their neighborhood. So I invite you to come and just listen. You will experience the depth of the problem. It is not as easy as just putting up some more buildings to put housing for whomever. As you use, you will become aware of your own conflicted feelings at the same time that you remember our UU principles. There's a flyer on the back table with information on these meetings. It's Wednesday evening at 6 or Thursday morning at 10:30. They serve food. That's always a good incentive. And it's just amazing to hear the neighbors fight against this proposal. I invite you all to show up. Thank you.
Equal access to a quality education is a social justice issue, and addressing it helps with every other social justice issue. Imagine for a moment a fortunate child who goes to a private school, has a very small class, has a talented teacher, her parents get her ready for school each day and take her to school. They've noticed her interests in some areas and they've arranged for after-school activities. Her parents go to the school events, and she feels a part of the school along with her family. This is how it should be for all children. Imagine another child in a public school, in one of the less well-supported public schools where teachers are not apt to go. The talented teachers are not apt to go. This child wakes up and hears her mother say, "Your breakfast's on the table, I have to go to work." Father hasn't been home for a while, he's working several jobs. This child walks to school, and some students ahead don't really notice her. She gets to the school, and the teacher's busy with papers. She's forgotten her homework and begins to get worried. As she sits there nervous, she gets more and more sad, and finally the teacher asks for the homework, and she says, "I forgot it, my mother was gone," and all the children laugh, and she feels lessened. This child may be adrift. This child may not attend school very many days. This child may drop out. And if this child drops out, her chances of committing a crime or being thought to commit a crime and being imprisoned are greatly increased. And in any case, it's highly likely that she will leave school ill-equipped for a career or college. All over the world, there is inequity in education. Last year, Robert Putnam wrote a book called Our Kids, the American Dream in Crisis. How many of you read it? I know some of you did. In this book, he goes through deep research that shows that it's getting harder for our children of lower financial strata to feel included in a community. And the absence of community, added to lower quality schools, is depriving them of a future. And here in Hawaii, our opportunity gap is even greater than what Robert Putnam described for our nation. Because here in Hawaii, we have the highest rate of students in private school in the United States. And this exodus takes talented students and, very importantly, the parents most likely to be engaged and help to support the school. Those people leave the system. We have the highest rate of teacher turnover in Hawaii of any state. It's been researched that a teacher really hits their stride, becomes an accomplished teacher by year 5, and they continue to get better and better and better through to their 20th year and then retain it and stay an excellent teacher. In Hawaii, 55% of the teachers leave within the first 5 years. In addition, we have classrooms that have no teacher assigned to them for the whole year, especially in science areas. We have substitutes serving those classes, sometimes who've never had even a minor in that area in college. These things probably contribute to the next horrible statistic, which is we have the highest student absentee rate in the country. When students miss school, they're more likely to drop out. When students drop out, they're more likely to commit a crime. On top of these factors, we have the problem that we have the highest cost of living for parents. So parents are forced to work more jobs and give less attention to the kids. Great private schools propel the lucky students to go farther, and the families offering support help them, which is wonderful, but it causes this gap to yet grow larger. At the end of July, we had a service on education and some of the hopeful programs that are happening in Hawaii. There's a new Hawaii Department of Education program called HA, and it uses the initials of the word breath to stand for those conditions that people need to learn. In that service, we looked at how those conditions that people need to learn actually are closely parallel to our 8 UU principles. My dream is that we will help these HA programs to reach more students. There is an opportunity in our congregation to make a difference through mentoring or tutoring, through supporting teachers' working conditions and salary increases, raising funds or volunteering in some of these important new programs that help students to feel that they belong and to be a part of a community. The stories about these educational solutions are on our website. If you look at past services, you can watch a video. Thank you, Ian. Many of you already work in public schools to support public schools, students, and teachers. This church contributed to Parents for Public Schools Hawaii, which I've served on the board of since founding. We've co-founded it 7 years ago. We UUs are uniquely qualified to mentor students and to support teachers in schools. So we have a new education resolution that's there on the website for you to read in full. But the gist of it is that we commit to support teachers and public schools and to support each student to ensure that each student is noticed and engaged.